If you're in Seattle, and you need to buy or sell a home, we'll be right there for you. Because we're the realtors that you can trust. So go to ronanddonsitdown.com.
You're listening to The Ron and Don Show on the Ron and Don Radio Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's Ron and Don with what's hot in real estate.
Hey, you guys, what's going on? And welcome to episode 872 of the Ron and Don Show. We are back live in the Les Schwab studio.
What is up, Ron and Don Nation?
Hey, don't forget, every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, we give you the Ron and Don Show that you'll always heard in Afternoon Drive on Cairo. Give you the news as we see it. We open up the mailbag. Of course, we've added Matt off the mic and his chunky butt. But today, all we're going to do is we're talking about real estate. Every Friday, it's one segment. It's 10, 12 minutes, and we share with you something that we're learning that we think may help out some of our clients, friends, or maybe you're even thinking about getting in the real estate game. Just this week, we had a sit down with our friend Cameron. Cameron lives down in Arizona, and he's like, hey, man, I'm thinking about becoming an agent. We know his mom. She's one of our clients. She said, would you sit down with Cameron? And we did, and we tried to talk him out of it, right? Yeah, we tried to talk him out of it. So anyway, Cameron, thanks for sitting down with us, and we love sitting down with you guys. A recent article that I read in the New York Post, which is very interesting, and the headline is this, and this is stuff that Ron and I talk about all the time, but let's do a deeper dive. It says boomers are leaving their millennial children with a huge headache. And here's the headache, right? This is incredible. When you think about boomers own trillions of dollars worth of real estate in this country, trillions of dollars. And not only do they control more real estate than anyone else, well, they control 41% of all real estate in America today when it comes to commercial real estate and it comes to residential real estate. Their kids, the millennials, they only control about 20% of the real estate. Here's what's happening, though, is these boomers, as they retire, as they pass away, and I'm not a boomer myself, I'm right under the boomer, and Ron is as well. But if the oldest boomers are beginning to age out. If you're 80, right? If you're 80, you're still considered a boomer. And then beyond that, you're the silent generation, and then up to the greatest generation. What we see happening is boomer families are taking these pieces of real estate that they have, and they're leaving this real estate for their children. And here's the caveat, and this article writes about it, and Ron and I see this all the time. The real estate that they're handing down to their children, most of them do not have a will. And when you don't have a will, and you've left a piece of real estate, and most of the real estate has a lot of deferred maintenance to it. Big homes, lots of stuff, and now we have to bring in attorneys and go through probate. Ron, they say that this has become a real big headache for a lot of these millennials because they're like, Mom and Dad, thanks for the real estate, and at the same time, why couldn't you sit down with an attorney, figure out a will, because now all the kids are in a fight, or now this has to go through the court system, and the court system is going to decide who gets what and what we can sell and whose name's going to be on the top. Or there's a piece of real estate that has a reverse mortgage on it. In other words, Mom and Dad ran out of money. They couldn't get a loan because they don't have a job. So they put a reverse mortgage on the house, and kids think, wow, I'm getting this house worth $500,000. And then you find out that most of it is gone because Mom and Dad put a reverse on it and didn't tell you. And so, Ron, we see this every single day in our business where boomers are passing away or the silent generation is passing away, and they don't have their affairs in order. They don't have their stuff in order. They don't have their paperwork in order, and they don't legally have things in order. And this really is that you're trying to bless your kids with a piece of real estate, seeing that you're doing something that would be awesome for them. And a lot of times kids end up fighting and never talking to each other again.
Yeah, and sometimes a parent, in thinking they're going to do the right thing, puts a weird clause in a will. Like I could say, Don, my son, he gets to live in the house for 6 months, and the other children don't get anything.
As long as he marries a woman and not a man.
Right. So
and we've seen that.
We've
That's
seen
true.
just
That's true.
weird clauses
That's true.
in here. And the other thing that happens really frequently is that one sibling gets saddled with the responsibility, but not the resources to do anything.
Yep.
So you'll have a family with 4 kids. Kid number 2 is made the executor of the estate. This piece of real estate gets given to them. And like you said, the parents didn't clean anything out. They did all kinds of deferred maintenance. They wanted to stay in their house till the bitter end. And so now this child number 2 gets handed the reins, and it's like, hey, sell this house. So child 3 lives in Hawaii, and they're like, hey, just send me my check.
Send me a check.
Send me my check for $400,000. It's like, no,
Right.
dude, like there is so much deferred maintenance on this house that needs to be handled.
And so much stuff left
And
behind.
so much stuff left behind. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
See you at Christmas. And so this could have been remedied, like you said, if the family had gotten together and come up with a game plan. It's a difficult conversation to have, and most people don't want to sit down there and go, "Hey, you are going to pass away soon before we do."
And that's what this
hopefully."
article talked about. It said the number one problem is that generation does not like to talk about death. And if you don't talk about death, it doesn't unlock these other conversations, right?
Right, and so you have to have a plan. And let's say that everybody agreed. Yes, child number 3 does get to live in the house for 6 months. Or I'm dealing with a situation. My neighbor up by the tiny house. There's like 5 kids in the family, but 1 kid actually uses and maintains the property. Well, should that 1 kid then get control of this property? And there's a universe where that makes sense, where the other 4 siblings go, you know what? We don't do any of the maintenance there. We go up there maybe once a year. That's fine. Let this sibling have that property. But that's probably not going to happen. You're probably going to have one of the siblings go, well, wait a minute. I want my share of that inheritance. Even though I put in 0 effort, I don't do any of the maintenance. I don't go up there hardly ever at all, but it's an asset on the asset column. And so I want my share. So there's an easy way to do this while the parents are still in sound mind and still alive, to just, you decide. You're the one that built the wealth to buy this real estate. If you want to say Don gets 100% of the vacation property, period, end of story. And here's my reason why. If you want to give the reason why, you can. He's been up there maintaining it. He enjoys it. This is what I wanted to do. I'm giving him that situation. Child number 3 that moved away to Hawaii, you know what? You get some cash, or you get some stock, or you get nothing. And here's why. And so, but people don't, they think that there's this right of fairness in the way they see the world, and that is not true. We've even had a situation where a sibling gifted a piece of property to their friend and didn't consult anybody else in the family. It's like, well, my friend helped me out a lot. It's like, okay, that's cool, but like that doesn't mean that they deserve a piece of property.
People are on their deathbed sometimes, and cognitively they're not all there, and they'll change their will. And sometimes people that are in the room, maybe it's a neighbor, maybe it's a nurse, they end up sometimes getting the property willed to them because that person will change the will on their deathbed sometimes, and sometimes that's not legal. So here's some things that we would encourage you to do. If you do want to leave a piece of property and you do want to bless your kids with that, number 1, right away, go see a legal professional, right? Make sure that you have a durable power of attorney. Make sure that everybody understands who has the power of attorney and what that means. And have a family meeting and talk about passing. Talk about death. Talk about what it's going to be like. I have these conversations with my son now. I'm an older dad. I'm 58. He's 15, right? So if I'm lucky, if I'm really lucky, maybe I get a couple more decades, but who knows? And so having a will where you spell everything out, what would you do? Do you want to be left on life support? Is that important to you? And gobble up all the resources? I don't want to be left on life support if something were to happen. And so that's all in the will. And then the other thing is, like, I spent part of the Memorial Day weekend going through my garage and getting rid of a lot of stuff that people dropped off to me when I had my son. And they're like, hey, you're going to love these books. Or, hey, I got an extra pair of shoes. Or, hey, I got the snowboard. Anytime you have a child, people hang on to stuff and they want to give it to another child because it means a lot to them. And maybe they don't have grandkids yet. So they drop all those things and books and everything else off at your door. So I went out in the garage with my son and I said, hey, is there anything here that you think you would want in the future? And there wasn't a lot of things that he wanted. He continues to want one of my bikes. He wanted one of my guitars. He wanted one of my amps, a microphone, and a couple other things. And then all that other stuff I just got rid of, right? I have a little storage thing under my house. I go through that every single year. Is there something here that I can get rid of? I go through my mudroom. I go through my closet at home. I go through all that stuff as kind of a spring cleaning. And I really think in terms of, are these things that I need now that we can use now? Is this an important resource? And if not, what I don't want to do is I don't want to pass away and for my son to have to go through all these things. I see the heartbreak of that when kids lose their parents and it's already devastating enough. And now and it's usually one of the kids, as Ron said here so eloquently, that has been picked out. And now they got to go through all the stuff. They got to deal with courts. They got to deal with attorneys. And sometimes when there's not we sometimes will get hired to sell a house. We just sold a house that we got hired to sell. We were hired 2 years ago because someone passed away and they weren't clear on a lot of issues and a lot of things. And there was something that they're giving money to a neighbor and all. So finally we sold that house a couple of weeks ago, but it's taken 2 years to get there. And I mean, we're talking cars out in the driveway and a basement packed full of stuff and all kinds of collections that people think are worth a lot of money and they're not, and old TV sets and everything else. And as people get older, it gets harder and harder to take care of all that stuff, and especially if there's a cognitive issue or a health issue and it just kind of gets away from you. We go into so many houses where people apologize and they say, hey, I'm sorry, this is a hoarder house. And we're like, well, we don't call it a hoarder house. We call it a collector house. We see more of that than anything else.
It's a burden to the kids.
When I read it in this article, boomers are leaving their millennial children with a huge headache. And I read this. Everything that we see in our real estate business was in this article. And I was going, yes, 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 yes. It is all of that. And sometimes the best thing to do, sell that piece of real estate while you're alive, put it in an S&P 500 index fund, and then allow your kids to split it up, or your grandkids, or whatever that's going to be when you're gone, and then it's handled and it's settled. But when you leave a house with a bunch of your stuff that's been uncurated inside, and then the majority of boomers have not done their paperwork, like, should I take this thing and put it in a living trust? Most people don't even know what a living trust is. And then what you end up doing, because you didn't do your work and you want to be a blessing to your kids or grandkids, a lot of that money ends up going to attorneys, and a lot of that money ends up going to the government, because now the government and the court and the attorneys, they all have to get paid. And where do you think that money comes from? It comes out of the house. So everything you want to bless your kids with, a lot of times those resources are gone or diminished because we didn't do our work when we were 40, 50, 60 years old. And if you're in your 30s and you're acquiring real things like real property and real pieces of real estate, you should be asking yourself these questions now and then updating these documents every 5 to 7 years, right?
Yeah, that's very well said. And then the last thing I would say is, if while you're of sound mind, you can initiate that plan to, if you can't maintain the house, sell the house. There's nothing.
Yeah.
I get sentimentality and I get memories that have happened in a house, but the house's function is twofold in my mind. One, it was a place for you to grow up and raise your family. Two, it is an investment vehicle. And if you can sell it at the right time, it does more good for everybody. Letting it decline and go into disrepair is a burden on everybody. That does not help you. It doesn't help them, and it doesn't put any money in anybody's pocket. It is a drain. And so if getting out at the right time is a skill set that not many people have.
Yeah, and if you need some resources on that, or you need a legal mind, or talk about a living trust, or if I put things into, if I want to put things in my will and I want to have some kind of tax advantages or benefits, we know people that can help with that stuff as well, you guys. So just have your affairs in order, keep updating that. And I don't know what it is. I think it might have been the greatest generation coming home, the terrible things they saw, and they didn't want to talk about it, so they didn't talk about death. And I remember talking to a writer that's written incredible stories about the greatest generation. And I said, how come they always wait to the end of their life to tell their story? And he says, because when they come home, they just want to get on with it and they want things to be normal again. But then when they're about to die, and you see that, right? When you look at the Band of Brothers are now all dead. But you saw when the Band of Brothers first came out a decade and a half ago, when Dick Winters and all the Band of Brothers were there and they were being interviewed about this movie. It was really incredible, right? We didn't see that in the Pacific because all those guys in the Air Force were dead at the time that those guys put together the Pacific. But the Band of Brothers, they told those stories, and it wasn't about them. It was about the legacy of their friends that were 17, 18, 19, 20 years old that may have died on a foreign beach like Normandy, or died when they were heading into Paris, or they died maybe over somewhere on Guam or in one of the canals. So they feel like it's very important to tell the story of the men and the women that didn't come back, and they want their legacy and their story to be heard. That's why now a lot of Vietnam vets are hitting that age, and we're hearing them now tell their stories, and we're getting a different perspective about that war as well. On both sides, right? You have those soldiers of the Viet Cong. They're now giving their perspective of what that was like, as well as American soldiers that fought in that conflict. So anyway, don't be afraid to talk about death. It's the greatest blessing that you can give your kids. And dying is a part of living, right? Dying is a part of living. And leaving a legacy, it'll be so much better if you don't leave a bunch of work and you don't leave a bunch of infighting that's going to happen with your relatives. And we see that a lot. Everybody wants to come get the gun collection, but nobody wants to get rid of the Michael Jackson waterbed, right?
Let's leave it there.
Ron used to have a Michael Jackson waterbed, so he's a little... lots of mirrors, too. Hey, you guys, thanks for listening to this episode of The Ron and Don Show. Don't forget, if you need us, just reach out.
Yeah, ronandonsitdown.com. We sell the sound. So north, south, east side, west side, we got you covered. We can get a Ron and Don sit-down scheduled for your buyers, sellers, and investors. Let's do that.
South side?
South side?
Yeah, all right. RonandDonSitDown.com. We'll send you a buyer playbook, a seller playbook, and we'll come out. We'll see your property. First, we'd love to meet with you online and give you one of these handy mugs that say, I sat down with fake drink, Ron and Don. All right, till next time. Head up, shoulders back. You've been listening to the Ron and Don Show all night on the Ron and Don Radio Network.
Well, that's it. Show's over. We'll see you next time on the Ron and Don Radio Network.